All right, so today we're going to deep dive into a situation that, honestly, a lot of people probably find themselves in at some point.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So our listener is 18 years old
Mm-hmm.
and 4 months into a relationship
Okay.
with another woman who's also 18,
Mm-hmm.
and she's feeling, pretty in love, it sounds like.
Yeah, new relationship energy.
Yeah, exactly. And then kind of out of the blue, her girlfriend brings up this idea of an open relationship,
Oh, wow, yeah.
and
That's
she's totally not into it.
4 months in. That's a pretty big
I know.
to just drop on someone.
Yeah. And so then when she expresses, her hesitation about it, her girlfriend accuses her of being controlling.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah. So you can imagine how that would make someone feel, especially at 18 when you're still figuring everything out about relationships.
Right, and especially like at the beginning when things are supposed to be, all like lovey-dovey and like trusting each other and
Yeah.
building that foundation, and then all of a sudden this big thing comes in and kind of rocks the boat a little bit.
Totally.
Yeah.
And, she did what a lot of us do in these situations. She went online and asked for advice
Of course.
and got a whole range of responses.
I bet.
Yeah, everything from dump her immediately to, people trying to explain ethical non-monogamy and how open relationships can work. And even someone compared it to a job interview where there's all these red flags.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
So we have a lot to unpack here.
We do. We have a lot to unpack. So let's go back to our listener's original post and kind of break down what's going on for her.
Okay.
So she says she's, deeply in love, doesn't want to hurt her girlfriend, but feels completely blindsided by this request. And like I said, that word controlling really seems to have gotten under her skin.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense why that would be hurtful because, being called controlling, especially by someone that you love, it kind of like implies that you're trying to like, kind of manipulate them or have like, power over them in some way.
Right. It's definitely not a positive thing.
No,
Yeah,
and it can make you second guess yourself and your actions in the relationship.
totally. And, especially at 18, communication can be a little tricky.
Oh, yeah, big time.
So let's talk about this whole concept of open relationships at 18.
Okay.
Like, is that even realistic or healthy at such a young age?
It's a really good question. And, I think it's important to remember that at 18, you're both still figuring out who you are, what you want in life. And those early romantic experiences are so crucial for kind of shaping your future relationships.
Right.
So throwing in the complexities of an open relationship at that age, it can be a lot to handle.
It can be.
Yeah.
It's like trying to learn to swim in the ocean before you've even been in a pool,
Exactly.
And I think it's important to say that we're not here to judge open relationships. They can work for some people,
Yeah.
but they require a level of maturity, communication, self-awareness that, most 18-year-olds haven't quite developed yet.
Right. And I think, too, it's important to think about, just the emotional intensity of that age. Like everything feels so big and so important. And so if you're already dealing with the normal ups and downs of a new relationship, and then you add in like the potential for jealousy and insecurity that can come with an open relationship, it can be really overwhelming.
For sure. And, she mentioned that her girlfriend's only brought this up once so far.
Yeah.
So could this just be a case of her kind of testing the waters,
Yeah.
seeing what her reaction would be?
I mean, that's definitely possible.
Yeah.
Maybe she's not even entirely sure what she wants yet.
Right. Or maybe she's just not communicating her needs in a very healthy way.
Right. And I think sometimes people, especially at that age, they avoid confrontation like the plague.
Oh, for sure.
So it might be easier to sort of hint at wanting something different instead of having like a direct conversation about potentially, breaking up.
Yeah, like maybe this is her way of kind of trying to create some distance without actually having to say, hey, I think we should break up.
It's possible, and it's something to definitely think about.
Yeah. So what does all this mean for our listener?
Well, I think she has a lot to consider. Starting with what does she actually want in a relationship?
Right. Does she see herself in an open relationship?
Right. And if not, then is this something that she's willing to compromise on, or is it a deal breaker for her?
And how does she even begin to have this conversation with her girlfriend in a way that feels safe and productive?
It's a tough one.
It is. But we're going to unpack all of that right after the break.
So, we were talking about the online advice she got, and it's interesting how many people just jumped right to, assuming the worst.
Yeah, like
Oh.
that she's already cheating or that she's like trying to pull a fast one.
Right. And it's easy to get caught up in that, especially when you're reading these like really dramatic stories online.
Totally. But it's important to remember that we're only getting one side of the story.
Exactly. We don't know the girlfriend's perspective or what's really going on in her head.
Right. And it's so easy for people to project their own baggage onto other people's situations.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Everyone's bringing their own experiences and anxieties to the table.
It's like a potluck of relationship drama.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's a good reminder that online advice should always be taken with a grain of salt.
Like a giant grain of salt.
Yeah, a whole shakerful.
You really have to sift through it and figure out what resonates with you and what applies to your specific situation.
For sure. Now, there were also some commenters who took a more nuanced approach.
Okay.
Like they were suggesting that maybe this is just a case of incompatibility.
Right. Maybe they just have different visions for what they want in a relationship.
Then that's totally valid.
Yeah, like wanting different things doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship is bad.
No, it just means that they might not be as compatible as they initially thought.
Exactly. And someone even compared it to a job interview.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like if there are red flags popping up early on, it's a sign to maybe pause and reevaluate.
It's like, are you really going to take that job if you're already seeing all these warning signs?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there were those who suggested that maybe the girlfriend is just struggling to communicate her needs effectively.
Right. Maybe she's not even entirely sure what she wants, but she knows that something's not quite right.
Yeah, like maybe she's feeling unfulfilled, but she doesn't know how to articulate it.
And that can be really tough, especially at that age,
It can be.
when you're still figuring out how to communicate your feelings in a healthy way.
And, sometimes people just avoid those difficult conversations altogether.
Oh, yeah. It's way easier to just kind of hint at things or hope that the other person will magically figure it out.
Right, but that rarely ever works.
It usually just leads to more confusion and resentment down the line.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So even if she's just curious about open relationships, diving into that world without a solid foundation of communication and trust can be really risky.
It's like walking into a minefield blindfolded.
You're bound to step on something you don't want to.
And it's not just about the potential for jealousy or hurt feelings.
Right?
It's also about the fact that at that age, you're still developing your sense of self and your relationship patterns. So if you're constantly second guessing yourself or wondering if you're good enough, it can really impact your self-esteem.
For sure. And I think it's important to emphasize again that open relationships can work for some people,
Yes, absolutely.
but they require a level of maturity and communication skills that most 18-year-olds just don't have yet.
And it's not about judging those who choose open relationships.
No, not at all.
It's about recognizing that it's a complex model that requires a lot of thought and careful consideration.
Exactly.
Mm.
So what does all this mean for our listener?
Well, I think she really needs to take a step back and evaluate what she wants and needs in a relationship.
Yeah, like does she see herself in an open relationship?
Right. And if not, is this something that she's willing to compromise on, or is it a deal breaker for her?
And I think she also needs to think about how she wants to approach this conversation with her girlfriend.
Yeah, because it's clearly something that's causing a lot of tension and anxiety.
Right. And how can she do it in a way that feels safe and productive and allows them to really understand each other's perspectives?
It's going to be a tough conversation, but it's an important one to have.
It is. And I think it's important for her to remember that she has a voice in this.
Absolutely.
Her feelings and needs are valid, and she deserves to be in a relationship that makes her feel happy and secure.
Right. And if this relationship isn't providing that, then she needs to be honest with herself and with her girlfriend.
Exactly. It's all about communication and self-respect.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, so we've talked about the online advice, we've explored all the different angles, and now it's time for the hard part.
Yeah, actually talking to her girlfriend.
Yeah, how does she even begin to approach this conversation?
I know it can feel daunting, especially, after being labeled as controlling.
Right.
But honest and open communication is so crucial for any healthy relationship.
It is, but how do you even start a conversation like that?
Well, I think it's important to address that controlling comment head on.
Okay.
But instead of getting defensive, try to approach it from a place of understanding. You could say something like, when you called me controlling, it hurt my feelings because that's not how I see myself or how I want to make you feel in our relationship.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can explain why that label doesn't resonate with you,
Mm-hmm.
You could say something like, for me, wanting a monogamous relationship is about wanting a deep and exclusive connection with you. It's not about trying to control you or limit your freedom.
Right. It's about defining what monogamy means to you
Exactly.
and why it's important for your sense of security and connection.
And don't be afraid to set boundaries.
Yeah, that can be tough.
It can, but if you're truly uncomfortable with the idea of an open relationship, you need to make that clear.
So how do you do that?
You can say something like, I respect your curiosity about open relationships, but that's just not something I'm open to right now. It goes against my personal values and what I envision for us.
Okay, so you've expressed your perspective, but now it's important to listen to hers.
Yes, absolutely.
Try to understand why she's even bringing this up in the first place.
Yeah. Right. Is it just curiosity? Does she want more freedom? Or is there something deeper going on? Like maybe she's feeling unfulfilled in the relationship.
So ask questions.
Lots of questions.
Of what?
You could ask, what is it about open relationships that appeals to you? Or what are you hoping to gain or experience by opening things up?
Okay, so those are good questions to kind of get her talking and understand her perspective.
Exactly. And it shows her that you genuinely care about how she's feeling, even if you don't ultimately agree with her.
Right, so once you've both had a chance to talk, it's time to assess your compatibility.
Yeah. Do your needs and desires align?
Right. Are there any compromises that would work for both of you?
Or are you fundamentally at odds when it comes to something as important as, the structure of your relationship?
And this requires honesty,
A lot of it.
which can be scary.
It can.
But sometimes, despite your best efforts, two people just want different things.
And that's okay.
It is. It really is.
Recognizing incompatibility isn't a failure.
No.
It's a sign of maturity.
Yeah, it means you're prioritizing your own happiness and well-being, and you're respecting your partner enough to let them do the same.
Exactly. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let go.
It's true. And it's not easy, but staying in a relationship that's no longer serving you, it doesn't benefit either of you.
It's like clinging to a sinking ship.
You're both going to end up underwater.
Exactly.
So to wrap this all up, communication is key.
Always.
Talk to your girlfriend. Be honest about your feelings. Set boundaries. And most importantly, listen to what she has to say.
And trust your gut.
Yes.
Yeah.
If something feels off, it probably is.
You deserve to be in a relationship that brings you joy, not anxiety.
Absolutely. And on that note, that's our deep dive for today.
We hope this has helped.
We hope so too. And remember, you're not alone in this, and we're always here to offer support and guidance.